I refuse to fly with a maintenance worker playing pilot. Single fathers have no business in professional cockpits.
Victoria Ashworth's voice cut through the morning briefing room at Skyline Regional Airlines like a blade through silk. Her perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the polished mahogany table designer flight suit tailored to perfection. Blonde hair swept into an immaculate chignon. At 6:47 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday morning, those words would change everything. Before we dive into this story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this moment makes your blood boil the way it did, mine, smash that subscribe button. Because in exactly 18 minutes, the man she just humiliated will reveal something that will turn this entire airline upside down. Marcus Johnson stood motionless near the back wall, his worn flight suit a stark contrast to the pristine uniform surrounding him. Grease lingered under his fingernails from his early morning maintenance shift. In his chest pocket, folded carefully, lay a crayon drawing from his 9-year-old son Tyler. The words, "World's Best Pilot," scrawled in red marker across a stick-figure airplane. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his expression remained calm. The briefing room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. 12 pairs of eyes shifted between Victoria and Marcus, waiting for a response that never came. Marcus had learned long ago that silence often spoke louder than words. Captain James Morrison, a 52-year-old veteran with silver hair and a perpetual frown, leaned back in his chair. Victoria raises valid concerns about operational focus. Single parents face distractions. Lieutenant Brad Cooper, barely 26 and eager to impress his superiors, smirked. I mean, look at him. Can't even afford a proper flight suit. How's he supposed to handle a $50 million aircraft? Scattered chuckles rippled through the room. Marcus felt the familiar weight of judgment settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. He'd experienced this before in smaller doses, but never so publicly, never so brazenly. Sarah Williams, a 28-year-old travel blogger sitting in the observation area for her airline industry series, raised her phone. The red recording light blinked on. This is being live-streamed, she announced to her 847 followers. Skyline regional pilot refusing to fly with single dad Copilot. This is actually happening. The live viewer count began climbing. 50 viewers, 100, 200. Victoria waved dismissively. Social media won't change aviation safety protocols. Some people simply don't belong in certain positions. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and steady. Interesting perspective, Captain Ashworth. You might want to reconsider that statement. Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. Excuse me, are you threatening me? Just offering advice, Marcus replied calmly. Sometimes assumptions can be expensive. Diego Martinez, the 45-year-old maintenance chief with calloused hands and kind eyes, stepped forward. Marcus is one of our best. Been working here 3 years, never missed a shift, knows every aircraft inside and out. Working maintenance, Victoria emphasized, her voice dripping with condescension. There's a difference between changing oil and commanding a flight deck. A rather significant one. Kevin Thompson, the aviation operations manager, cleared his throat nervously. Perhaps we should review the duty roster. No need, Victoria declared, standing gracefully, her heels clicking against the polished floor. I won't compromise passenger safety for political correctness. Find me a real co-pilot. Sarah's live stream had reached 500 viewers' comments, flooding the screen faster than she could read them. Skyline shame appeared multiple times. Stand up to her, this is discrimination, single dads are heroes. Marcus pulled out his phone, sending a quick text. To anyone watching, it looked like he was checking messages from his son. In reality, he was sending a coded message to Linda Rodriguez in HR Phase 1, complete. Documentation in progress. Maria Santos, a 31-year-old Hispanic flight attendant, watched from the doorway with growing anger. She'd seen this pattern before, had experienced similar treatment herself. Her hand moved to her phone recording video for evidence. The decision is final, Victoria announced. Professional standards exist for a reason. Mr. Johnson can return to his maintenance duties where he belongs. The dismissal in her tone was absolute. Marcus nodded once turned and walked toward the exit, but before leaving he paused at the doorway. "Captain Ashworth," he said without turning around. "You're absolutely right about professional standards. They do exist for a reason." The door closed softly behind him, leaving the room buzzing with tension and anticipation. Sarah's viewer count had hit 1000, and the comments were getting heated. Victoria smoothed her skirt and smiled coldly. "Now, shall we discuss actual flight operations?" Outside in the corridor, Marcus leaned against the wall and closed his eyes briefly. Tyler's drawing crinkled in his pocket. He pulled out his phone again, this time calling a different number. "It's happening," he said, quietly when the line connected. 18 minutes, make sure everything's ready." The voice on the other end was crisp professional. "All documentation prepared, Mr. Johnson. Legal standing by." Marcus hung up and began walking toward the hangar where Tyler waited with his homework, completely unaware that his father was about to turn an entire airline industry upside down. 3 years earlier, Marcus Johnson had made the most difficult decision of his life. Standing in the cemetery on a gray October morning, holding Tyler's small hand as they lowered his wife Angela's casket into the ground, he had chosen love over ambition. Angela's death from sudden cardiac complications had shattered their world. Marcus, then the youngest CEO in aviation history, had built Skyline Regional Airlines from a single-used aircraft to a fleet of 47 planes spanning the Pacific Northwest. His net worth exceeded $200 million, but none of it mattered when Tyler woke up crying for his mother every night. The decision was simple. Tyler needed stability, not a father who traveled constantly, attended board meetings, and lived in corporate towers. So, Marcus Johnson, billionaire CEO, disappeared into the background of his own company. He created a false employment record, a modest apartment lease, and a carefully constructed life as a maintenance technician with flight privileges. Only 3 people knew the truth: Linda Rodriguez and HR Diego Martinez, who had been his first employee, and his longtime attorney Michael Chang, who managed the legal complexities of his secret ownership. Marcus genuinely loved the hands-on work. Getting his hands dirty reminded him why he fell in love with aviation in the first place. He could fix engines, troubleshoot electrical problems, and still fly enough hours to maintain his certifications. Most importantly, he could pick Tyler up from school every day at 3:15 p.m. Their apartment on Maple Street was clean but modest. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen where Marcus made Tyler's lunches every morning. The refrigerator was covered with Tyler's artwork school certificates and photos of the 3 of them from happier times. Nothing indicated that the man making peanut butter sandwiches owned the airline where he worked maintenance. Tyler knew his father was a pilot, but not the extent of his capabilities. The boy's innocent pride in his pilot dad was pure and uncomplicated. Marcus treasured that innocence, protecting it carefully from the complexities of corporate ownership and wealth. Meanwhile, Victoria Ashworth represented everything Marcus had once been, but no longer wanted to be. Driven, ambitious, and absolutely committed to professional excellence above all else. Her trauma was real, her dedication genuine, but her worldview had narrowed into rigid categories of acceptable and unacceptable. 5 years earlier, Victoria had been co-pilot on a flight where her captain, distracted by a family emergency call, made a critical error during landing approach. The resulting crash had killed 17 people, including Victoria's best friend in the cabin crew. The investigation cleared Victoria of any wrongdoing, but the psychological scars ran deep. Since then, Victoria had viewed any sign of personal life bleeding into professional space as a direct threat to safety. Single parents, financial stress, family obligations, all were red flags in her mental checklist of flight risks. She genuinely believed she was protecting passengers by maintaining rigid standards. Her personal life reflected this philosophy. No long-term relationships, no pets, no distractions from her career trajectory. Victoria lived in a pristine downtown condo, drove a lease BMW, and maintained her appearance with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. Every aspect of her existence served the goal of professional advancement. The irony was profound. Victoria feared that personal attachments would compromise professional performance, while Marcus had discovered that his love for Tyler actually sharpened his focus and commitment. Every decision he made, every risk he calculated was filtered through the lens of returning home safely to his son. Tyler Johnson was 9 years old, with his father's gentle eyes and his mother's infectious smile. He loved school dinosaurs and building model airplanes with his dad. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, often remarked on Tyler's unusual maturity and kindness toward other children. What she didn't know was that Tyler had learned empathy through loss, patience through his father's demanding schedule, and resilience through their quiet struggles. The boy carried his world's best pilot flag everywhere, a tattered piece of construction paper that had become his talisman. He would wait in Diego's office after school doing homework until his father finished work, never complaining about the late hours or the smell of jet fuel that clung to Marcus's clothes. Diego Martinez had been Marcus's first hire when Skyline Regional consisted of one leased Cessna and a Dream. A former Navy mechanic with 3 daughters and a wife of 20 years, Diego understood both the demands of aviation and the responsibilities of fatherhood. When Marcus revealed his plan to work undercover, Diego had been skeptical but ultimately supportive. "You're risking everything," Diego had warned. "What if someone discovers who you are? Then Tyler will have learned something important about integrity," Marcus had replied. "I'd rather he see his father working honestly than living in ivory towers." Diego kept the secret, becoming Marcus's closest ally in maintaining the facade. He assigned Marcus the most challenging maintenance tasks, knowing that former CEOs needed to prove themselves twice as hard as everyone else. He also served as Tyler's unofficial uncle, teaching the boy about aircraft mechanics and life lessons with equal care. The company Marcus had built reflected his values even in his absence from the executive suite. Skyline Regional maintained higher safety standards than required better employee benefits than competitors, and a culture that prioritized substance over appearance. Ironically, Victoria Ashworth had been attracted to the company precisely because of these standards, never knowing they originated from the maintenance worker she now scorned. As Marcus walked through the hangar that morning after Victoria's humiliation, he felt the familiar weight of his double life. Tyler waved excitedly from Diego's office window, holding up a completed math worksheet. The sight of his son's smile made every insult, every condescending remark worth enduring. But watching Tyler's face fall as other employees whispered and pointed, Marcus felt something shift inside him. His commitment to humility was absolute, but his tolerance for his son's pain had limits. The protective instinct that had driven him to abandon corporate life now drove him toward a different kind of confrontation. Tyler deserved to see his father respected, not ridiculed. More importantly, other single parents in aviation deserved to work without facing the kind of discrimination Marcus could absorb, but others might not survive. The decision crystallized as Marcus hugged his son in the maintenance office, surrounded by the aircraft he'd once purchased as corporate assets and now maintained with his own hands. It was time for Victoria Ashworth and everyone else to learn what happened when you underestimated someone who had everything to lose and nothing left to prove. The pilot's lounge buzzed with tension 30 minutes after the briefing room confrontation. Victoria sat primly in a leather chair, her legs crossed elegantly, holding court with Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Cooper. Her voice carried across the room with practiced authority. "Professional aviation requires discipline," she declared, stirring her coffee with deliberate precision. "When we start making exceptions for personal circumstances, we compromise everyone's safety." Sarah Williams had positioned herself strategically near the window, her phone still live streaming. The viewer count had climbed to 2,500, with comments flooding in from around the world. Aviation professionals, single parents, and social justice advocates were taking sides in real time. "This is Sarah Williams reporting live from Skyline Regional Airlines," she narrated quietly. "What started as a routine crew assignment has exploded into a debate about discrimination in the workplace. The pilot who refused to fly with the single father is now doubling down on her position." Captain Morrison nodded approvingly at Victoria. "Standards exist for good reason. I've seen too many accidents caused by distracted crew members. Personal problems don't belong in the cockpit. Lieutenant Cooper, eager to align with senior officers, added his voice. The guy can barely afford decent clothes. How's he supposed to handle the pressure of commercial aviation? Maybe he should focus on getting his life together before trying to advance his career. Maria Santos entered the lounge carrying a coffee tray, her jaw tight with controlled anger. As she passed Victoria's group, she deliberately slowed her pace, letting her phone record their conversation. The evidence was mounting. Tyler appeared in the lounge doorway, his small backpack hanging off one shoulder, looking for his father. He'd finished his homework and wanted to show Marcus his perfect score on the math quiz. The sight of the 9-year-old searching for his dad created an uncomfortable silence. Victoria's expression hardened. Children don't belong in operational areas. This is exactly the kind of unprofessional behavior I'm talking about. Tyler's eyes found Victoria, and he approached with the innocent directness that only children possess. "Excuse me, lady. Have you seen my dad? His name is Marcus, and he's the best pilot in the whole world." The room held its breath. Victoria looked down at the boy with barely concealed irritation. "Your father is a maintenance worker, sweetie. He fixes planes, he doesn't fly them." Tyler's face scrunched in confusion. "No, ma'am, my dad is a pilot. He flies every week. He taught me about lift and thrust and the boy's voice trailed off as he sensed the adult tension surrounding him. Lieutenant Cooper snorted. "Kid's been lied to. Probably tells everyone his dad's an astronaut too." Sarah's livestream viewers exploded in outrage. Comments poured in defending Tyler, criticizing the adults for involving a child in their workplace drama. The hashtag #ProtectTyler began trending alongside Skyline Shame. Marcus appeared in the doorway, having been alerted by Diego that Tyler was looking for him. He took in the scene immediately, his son surrounded by hostile adults. Victoria's cold expression, the cameras recording everything. His protective instincts flared. "Tyler," he said calmly, extending his hand. "Come here, buddy." The boy ran to his father's side, clutching Marcus's calloused hand. "Dad, they said you're not really a pilot. But you are right. You fly planes all the time." Marcus knelt to Tyler's eye level, speaking gently but loud enough for the room to hear. "I am absolutely a pilot, son. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Victoria stood abruptly, her designer heels clicking on the polished floor. "This is inappropriate. Personal conversations don't belong in professional spaces. Mr. Johnson, remove your child from this area immediately." Marcus rose slowly, Tyler's hand still in his. His voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Are you ordering me to remove my son from a public break room, Captain Ashworth? I'm enforcing company policy about non-employees in operational areas," Victoria replied coolly. "Perhaps if you spent less time bringing family problems to work, you'd understand professional boundaries." Sarah's phone captured every word, every gesture, every uncomfortable shift in the room's dynamic. Her viewer count had hit 3000, with major aviation blogs beginning to share the stream. This was becoming bigger than anyone anticipated. Kevin Thompson hurried into the lounge, having heard about the confrontation from concerned employees. As operations manager, he found himself caught between company policy, social media attention, and the volatile personalities involved. "Let's everyone take a step back," Kevin said nervously. "We can resolve this through proper channels." "There's nothing to resolve," Victoria stated firmly. "Mr. Johnson is a maintenance technician with part-time flight privileges. His family circumstances make him unsuitable for regular pilot duties. The decision stands." Diego Martinez entered behind Kevin, his maintenance uniform marked with honest work stains. He'd heard enough. "Marcus Johnson is the finest pilot I've ever worked with. More skilled than half the hotshots who think their degrees matter more than experience." Lieutenant Cooper laughed derisively. "Right? Because a mechanic's opinion about pilot qualifications matters. What's next? Asking the janitor about navigation systems." The insult hung in the air like toxic fumes. Tyler looked up at his father with wide eyes, beginning to understand that these adults were being deliberately cruel. His small hand tightened around Marcus's fingers. Marcus felt the moment crystallizing around him. Tyler's innocent trust, Victoria's casual cruelty, the social media spotlight, the gathering crowd of witnesses. Every instinct told him to reveal the truth immediately to protect his son from further humiliation. But strategic thinking won over emotional reaction. Let them dig deeper. Let the discrimination become undeniable. Let Victoria and her supporters fully expose their biases before revealing the devastating truth. Captain Ashworth Marcus said quietly, "You seem very confident in your assessment of my qualifications and character." Completely confident, Victoria replied without hesitation. "Some people know their place. Others need to be taught." Sarah's livestream audience was now approaching 5,000 viewers, with aviation industry professionals beginning to weigh in. Former colleagues of Marcus, unaware of his current circumstances, were defending him based on his past reputation. The irony was lost on everyone except Marcus himself. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, why are they being so mean?" Marcus knelt again, speaking to his son but projecting his voice for the cameras and witnesses. Sometimes Tyler people judge others without knowing the whole story. But the truth always comes out in the end. He stood meeting Victoria's gaze directly. 18 minutes, Captain. That's all the time you have left to be absolutely certain about your position. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows furrowed slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Marcus smiled for the first time since the morning began. It wasn't a pleasant expression. It means you might want to choose your next words very carefully. He took Tyler's hand and walked toward the exit, leaving behind a room full of confused faces and racing hearts. Sarah's phone followed their departure, capturing the quiet dignity of a father protecting his child while promising consequences for those who had crossed the line. In the maintenance hangar, Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Linda, it's time. Send the documentation to Kevin Thompson's office and make sure the board is standing by for an emergency meeting." The countdown had begun. The maintenance hangar felt different after the lounge confrontation. Tyler sat in Diego's office, coloring quietly while trying to make sense of the adult tension swirling around him. Through the glass partition, he could see his father working on an engine with unusual intensity, each movement precise and controlled. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with text messages, but he ignored them all, except one from Linda Rodriguez, documentation delivered. Kevin reviewing now. Legal team activated, awaiting your signal. Sarah Williams had moved her live stream to the parking lot, where her audience had swelled to over 8,000 viewers. Aviation bloggers, employment lawyers, and social justice advocates were dissecting every moment of the confrontation. The story was spreading beyond Skyline Regional, becoming a flashpoint for broader discussions about workplace discrimination. "This is bigger than one airline," Sarah told her viewers, scrolling through the explosive comment section. "We're seeing something that happens every day to working parents, especially single fathers finally exposed to public scrutiny." Inside the administrative offices, Kevin Thompson sat at his desk staring at an email attachment that made no sense. The file contained corporate documents bearing Marcus Johnson's name and positions of authority that shouldn't exist. CEO appointment letters, ownership certificates, board resolutions, all dated 3 years earlier, all bearing official seals. Kevin's first instinct was that someone was playing an elaborate prank. But the documentation appeared authentic, complete with Federal Aviation Authority verification codes and banking references that would be impossible to forge. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his phone. "Linda, I need you in my office immediately, and bring Marcus Johnson's complete employment file." Meanwhile, Victoria Ashworth was conducting an impromptu press conference in the pilot briefing room, having invited local aviation reporters to hear her perspective. She sat behind the mahogany table like a prosecutor presenting evidence, her appearance flawless under the camera lights. "Professional aviation demands absolute focus," she explained to the cameras. "When we compromise standards for social pressure, we put lives at risk. I stand by my assessment that Mr. Johnson's personal circumstances make him unsuitable for commercial pilot responsibilities." Captain Morrison nodded gravely beside her. In 28 years of aviation, I've learned that family distractions kill pilots and passengers. It's not personal, it's physics. Lieutenant Cooper, emboldened by the media attention, added his perspective. The guy works maintenance because that's his skill level. We can't lower pilot standards just because someone has a sob story. The comment struck their intended target. Tyler, watching from Diego's office, heard the muffled voices through the walls. He couldn't understand all the words, but the tone was clear. These people were saying mean things about his father. Diego noticed the boy's distress and knelt beside Tyler's chair. "Your dad is the strongest man I know, mijo. Sometimes strong people let others dig their own holes before filling them in." "Why are they so mad at Daddy?" Tyler asked, his crayon hovering over the coloring book. "He's never mean to anybody. Some people are afraid of things they don't understand," Diego explained gently. "Your father understands things that would surprise those fancy pilots." Maria Santos burst into the hangar, her face flushed with anger. "They're destroying him on camera, saying he's unqualified, unreliable, a danger to passengers. This has gone too far." Marcus looked up from the engine he'd been working on, his expression unreadable. "How many reporters are here now?" "4 local stations, 2 aviation blogs, and that travel blogger's stream has over 10,000 viewers," Maria reported. "The story's going viral." "Perfect," Marcus said quietly. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. "All stations ready. Initiate Phase 2. Across town, Linda Rodriguez received the message and immediately called an emergency meeting of Skyline Regional's board of directors. Within minutes, the company's 5 independent board members were conferencing and unaware of the brewing crisis, but responding to their CEO's directive. Back in Kevin Thompson's office, the operations manager was experiencing a complete breakdown of his understanding of reality. Linda Rodriguez had arrived with Marcus Johnson's employment file, but instead of the simple maintenance worker documentation, he expected she'd delivered a folder marked Executive Confidential. "This can't be right," Kevin whispered, comparing the employment records to the corporate ownership documents. "Marcus Johnson, maintenance technician, hired 3 years ago. But these other papers." Linda Rodriguez sat calmly in the chair across from his desk. "Which papers are confusing you, Kevin? These corporate filings showing Marcus Johnson as CEO and majority owner of Skyline Regional Airlines. They must be forgeries." Linda's expression remained neutral. "I can assure you they're completely authentic. Perhaps you should verify them with the FAA and Corporate Registrations Office." Kevin's phone rang before he could respond. The caller ID showed Federal Aviation Administration. With shaking hands, he answered. "Mr. Thompson, this is Inspector Patricia Wells from FAA Oversight. We understand you're currently investigating the employment status of Marcus Johnson." "Yes, but there seems to be some confusion about his position." "No confusion on our end, sir. Mr. Johnson holds current certifications for Commercial Pilot Instructor Pilot and Chief Executive Officer. His documentation is exemplary. Is there a specific concern about his qualifications?" Kevin looked at Linda, who watched him with patient professional courtesy. No concerns, just routine verification." "Excellent. Mr. Johnson has been one of our most respected industry partners for over a decade. Good day." The line went dead. Kevin set down his phone with trembling hands, finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of the situation unfolding around him. In the hangar, Tyler had abandoned his coloring to watch his father work. Marcus moved with the confident precision of someone who understood every component, every potential failure point of the massive aircraft before him. But Tyler saw something else in his father's movements, a quiet determination that suggested bigger changes were coming. Dad Tyler said suddenly, "Are you really just a maintenance guy?" Marcus paused in his work, considering his answer carefully. "Tyler, sometimes people need to do different jobs than the ones on their business cards. But no matter what job I do, what matters most is being your father. But you are a pilot, right?" "A real pilot." Marcus smiled, the expression reaching his eyes for the first time that day. "Yes, son, I'm a real pilot. In fact, I think it's time everyone else learned that too." He pulled out his phone and composed a final message. "Execute Phase 3. All parties to Conference Room Alpha in 15 minutes. Bring complete documentation package." Tyler watched his father's transformation with fascination. Marcus stood straighter, moved with different energy, spoke with quiet authority that seemed to fill the hangar space. Whatever was about to happen, Tyler sensed it would change everything. "Is this going to fix the mean people?" Tyler asked. Marcus picked up his son, holding him close for a moment. "Yes, buddy. This is going to fix everything." The countdown had reached its final phase, and Marcus Johnson was ready to step out of the shadows and into the light, not as the maintenance worker they'd mocked, but as the owner of everything they thought they protected. The administrative conference room filled quickly as Kevin Thompson's urgent meeting request spread through the facility. Victoria entered first, her confident stride unchanged despite the growing media attention outside. She'd spent the previous hour giving interviews, convinced that public pressure would vindicate her professional standards. Captain Morrison followed, flanked by Lieutenant Cooper and 2 other senior pilots who'd supported Victoria's position. They occupied one side of the polished conference table like a united front, their identical expressions of professional superiority masking growing unease about the meeting's purpose. Sarah Williams slipped in with her camera equipment, having gained access through her media credentials. Her live stream now boasted over 15,000 viewers, with major news networks beginning to pick up the story. The hashtag Skyline Standoff was trending nationally, with aviation professionals and civil rights advocates weighing in from across the country. Marcus entered last, carrying a simple manila folder and wearing the same worn maintenance coveralls that had sparked Victoria's initial disdain. Tyler walked beside him, a small hand clasped in his father's curious eyes, taking in the serious adult faces around the room. Kevin Thompson stood at the head of the table, his usual confident demeanor replaced by obvious nervousness. Linda Rodriguez sat to his right, her expression professionally neutral despite the explosive documents in her briefcase. "Thank you all for coming." Kevin began, his voice slightly unsteady. "We're here to address concerns about crew assignments and certain allegations about professional qualifications," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "There's nothing to discuss. My assessment of Mr. Johnson's suitability remains unchanged. Single parents with financial stress don't belong in commercial cockpits." Marcus remained silent, but his thumb gently stroked Tyler's hand in a comforting gesture. The boy sensed the tension but trusted his father completely. Lieutenant Cooper leaned forward aggressively. "I don't understand why we're even here. A maintenance worker complained about job assignments, so what people get turned down for positions they're not qualified for every day." "Exactly what qualifications concern you?" Lieutenant Linda Rodriguez asked quietly. "Are you serious?" Cooper laughed. "Look at him. Greasy coveralls, can't afford decent clothes, lives in some apartment with his kid. He's obviously struggling financially. How's someone like that going to handle the pressure of commercial aviation?" Sarah's camera captured every word, her viewers erupting in outrage at the blatant classism. Comments flooded in from pilots, mechanics, and aviation professionals defending Marcus and condemning the discrimination they were witnessing. Captain Morrison nodded approvingly. "Professional aviation requires focused discipline and financial stability. Mr. Johnson may be adequate for maintenance work, but pilot responsibility demands higher standards." Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying new authority. "Define higher standards, Captain Morrison." "Commercial pilot license instrument ratings, multi-engine certification, passenger transport authorization." Morrison rattled off. "Plus, demonstrated ability to handle complex emergency procedures under pressure." "Interesting," Marcus replied. "What else?" Victoria interjected sharply. "Leadership experience, decision-making under stress, understanding of regulatory compliance, familiarity with corporate aviation protocols. Things that come from proper training and career progression, not from changing oil filters." Tyler looked up at his father with wide eyes. These adults were being deliberately mean, using big words to make his dad feel small. But something in Marcus's expression suggested he wasn't feeling small at all. "Mr. Johnson," Kevin said, nervously consulting the papers Linda had provided, "could you please state your current certifications for the record?" Marcus opened his manila folder and pulled out a worn leather certificate holder. Commercial pilot license issued 12 years ago. Instrument rating multi-engine certification passenger transport authorization. Certified flight instructor for commercial aircraft. Emergency procedures specialist. Corporate aviation management certification. The room fell silent. Victoria's perfectly controlled expression flickered for the first time. Furthermore, Marcus continued, I hold current certifications for aircraft maintenance, avionics systems, emergency evacuation procedures, and federal aviation regulatory compliance. My flight hours total approximately 8,000, including heavy commercial aircraft, emergency medical transport, and adverse weather operations. Lieutenant Cooper's smugness began dissolving. That's impossible. You work maintenance. I work maintenance because I enjoy it, Marcus replied evenly, not because I'm limited to it. Diego Martinez entered the conference room carrying a tablet loaded with documentation. Sorry, I'm late. Had to print these maintenance reports showing Marcus's work quality and safety record. He set down a stack of papers. 0 incidents. 0 violations consistently exceeds performance standards. Best technician we've ever had. Maria Santos appeared in the doorway with her phone still recording. And here's video evidence of the discrimination he's faced today. Every insult, every assumption, every violation of company anti-harassment policy. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. This is a setup. You're all coordinating to make me look bad. Nobody needs to make you look bad, Sarah Williams said from behind her camera. 16,000 people watched you do it yourself. Kevin Thompson cleared his throat, consulting his notes with increasing nervousness. Mr. Johnson, there seem to be some discrepancies in your employment file that require clarification. Marcus stood slowly, Tyler's hand still in his. What kind of discrepancies? Corporate documents that don't match your current job classification. Such as Kevin's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Executive authorization papers, ownership certificates, board appointment documents. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victoria, Morrison, and Cooper exchanged uncertain glances, suddenly aware that something larger was unfolding around them. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. Daddy, what are ownership certificates? Marcus knelt to Tyler's eye level, speaking gently but loud enough for everyone to hear. Those are papers that show who owns things, buddy, like how you own your toys, adults own businesses. Do you own something? Dad, Marcus smiled, the expression carrying new meaning for everyone watching. Yes, son, I own something. He stood and faced the room, his maintenance coveralls suddenly seeming less important than the quiet authority radiating from his presence. Captain Ashworth, you've made several statements about my qualifications, my character, and my suitability for aviation responsibilities. Victoria's throat felt suddenly dry. I stand by my professional assessment. Excellent. Then you won't mind standing by it when my identity becomes clear. What identity? Morrison demanded. You're a maintenance worker who's been pretending to be more qualified than you are. Marcus opened his folder and removed a single black document. The Skyline Regional Airlines logo gleamed in gold foil across the top. He placed it gently on the conference table where everyone could see. Linda, would you please read the header of this document for everyone? Linda Rodriguez's professional mask finally cracked into a slight smile. Certificate of Incorporation, Skyline Regional Airlines Incorporated. Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder Marcus Johnson. Date of incorporation November 15th, 3 years ago. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went completely white. Morrison's mouth opened and closed without sound. Cooper's arrogant expression melted into confusion and growing horror. Tyler looked around the room at the shocked adult faces, then up at his father. Daddy, does that mean you're the boss of everyone? Marcus's smile was gentle as he answered his son, but his eyes never left Victoria's face. Yes, Tyler. That's exactly what it means. The revelation hit social media like a tsunami. Sarah Williams' live stream exploded to over 50,000 simultaneous viewers as the story spread beyond aviation circles into mainstream consciousness. Within 30 minutes, Skyline owner was trending alongside Justice for Marcus, with viewers sharing the stream across platforms faster than Sarah could process the engagement. This is unprecedented. Sarah narrated breathlessly to her camera. We've just witnessed the owner of an entire airline reveal his identity after being discriminated against by his own employees. The reactions in this room are, there are no words. Victoria Ashworth sat frozen in her chair designer suit, suddenly feeling like a costume makeup perfect, but face-drained of all color. The confident pilot who had dismissed Marcus hours earlier was now staring at corporate documents that proved she had just publicly humiliated her own boss. Captain Morrison's hands trembled as he reached for his phone, probably calculating how quickly he could update his resume. Lieutenant Cooper had gone completely silent, his earlier smugness replaced by visible panic as the implications of his comments sank in. Tyler, still processing what owner meant, looked around the room with innocent curiosity. Daddy, why does everyone look scared? Marcus knelt beside his son, speaking gently while maintaining eye contact with Victoria. Sometimes Tyler people say mean things about others without knowing the whole story. When the truth comes out, they realize they made mistakes. Are they sorry for being mean? We'll find out. Marcus replied, his voice carrying new weight that made several people in the room shift uncomfortably. Kevin Thompson had gone completely pale, realizing that his career had just imploded in real time. As operations manager, he was responsible for employee relations, and he'd just witnessed and participated in the public humiliation of the company's owner. Linda Rodriguez broke the silence with professional efficiency. Mr. Johnson, should I contact the board of directors to discuss immediate personnel actions? Not yet, Marcus said, standing slowly. I believe in giving people opportunities to clarify their positions before making permanent decisions. He turned to Victoria, who was staring at the corporate documents as if they might change content if she looked long enough. Captain Ashworth, you stated that I don't belong in commercial cockpits. You questioned my qualifications, my financial stability, and my focus as a single parent. Would you like to elaborate on those assessments? Victoria's throat felt like sandpaper. Every word she'd spoken that morning was recorded, live-streamed, and now being viewed by tens of thousands of people who knew she'd been wrong about everything. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Marcus replied calmly. I am exactly who these documents say I am. The question is, do you stand by your evaluation of my character and capabilities? Sarah's viewers were going absolutely wild. Comments flooded her screen faster than she could read them. Make her apologize. This is karma. Single dads everywhere are celebrating. The story was being picked up by major news networks, with CNN and Fox News both sending crews to the airport. Captain Morrison attempted damage control. Marcus, Mr. Johnson, sir, I think there may have been some miscommunication. Professional standards apply to everyone equally, do they? Captain Marcus interrupted. Because I heard you specifically reference single parents as inherently unreliable. Were you speaking about me personally or single parents in general? Morrison's face reddened as he realized every word could end his career. Professional focus is everyone needs. Diego Marcus called to his maintenance chief. How many single parents work in our maintenance and flight departments? Diego consulted his tablet. 17 maintenance technicians, 9 flight crew members, 12 administrative staff, all with exemplary records. And how many of those employees have faced similar treatment from management? Maria Santos stepped forward, her phone still recording. I have statements from 6 employees who've experienced discrimination for their family status. All documented, all witnessed. Lieutenant Cooper finally found his voice. Sir, I had no idea. We were just following Captain Ashworth's lead. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. Lieutenant Cooper, you stated that I should stick to changing diapers instead of flight plans. You also suggested I was a charity case who couldn't afford proper equipment. Were you following someone else's lead or expressing your own views? Cooper's face went red, then white, then red again. I didn't mean... Tyler Marcus said to his son, what do you think about Lieutenant Cooper's comments about changing diapers? Tyler's innocent voice carried clearly through the room. I think he's silly, Dad. You're really good at changing diapers and flying planes. You do both for me because you love me." The simplicity of Tyler's response hit harder than any corporate discipline could. Cooper looked physically ill as he realized a 9-year-old had just demonstrated more wisdom and character than he had. Victoria finally attempted to speak. "Mr. Johnson, Marcus, I had no way of knowing." Knowing what Marcus asked pointedly, that I was the owner, or that I deserved basic professional respect regardless of my job title. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah's livestream audience was approaching 75,000 viewers with aviation industry professionals, employment lawyers, and civil rights advocates dissecting every word in real time. "The discrimination you displayed wasn't about qualifications or company hierarchy," Marcus continued. "It was about classism, family status bias, and assumptions based on appearance. Would those attitudes change if I were just a skilled maintenance worker without ownership stakes?" Victoria's silence was answer enough. She'd revealed biases that went far beyond professional standards, exposing prejudices that affected every working parent in aviation. Outside the conference room, word was spreading through the airport. Ground crew members, flight attendants, baggage handlers, and administrative staff were gathering, many recording on their phones as the story went viral. Several employees who'd experienced similar discrimination began sharing their stories with reporters. Jennifer Hayes, a young pilot trainee, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Captain Ashworth rejected my application last month because I'm pregnant. She said family complications made me unsuitable for aviation training. I was going to quit the industry." Robert Martinez from ground crew nodded grimly. "She blocked my promotion to crew chief because I have kids in daycare. Said I couldn't be trusted for early morning shifts." The pattern was becoming clear. Victoria's discrimination wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader bias against working parents that had infected the airline's culture. Marcus listened to each testimony, his expression growing more serious. Tyler stayed close to his father's side, beginning to understand that something important was happening that would affect many families like theirs. Linda Marcus said quietly, "Please contact our legal department. I want a complete review of all personnel decisions made in the past 12 months with particular attention to family status discrimination. Already initiated, sir. Legal is standing by for immediate consultation." Victoria finally found her voice again. "Marcus, please understand. My concerns were about safety, not discrimination. I've seen what happens when pilots get distracted." "Have you seen what happens when talented people get dismissed because of prejudice?" Marcus countered. "How many good pilots has this company lost because managers judge their potential based on their family circumstances instead of their skills?" Sarah's live stream had become appointment viewing, with major news personalities beginning to comment on the unfolding drama. The story was being framed as a watershed moment for workplace discrimination, with Marcus Johnson becoming an unlikely champion for single parents everywhere. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve again. "Dad, are you going to fire the mean lady?" The innocent question carried enormous weight. Every person in the room held their breath, knowing that a 9-year-old's sense of justice might determine their professional futures. Marcus looked down at his son with infinite patience. "Tyler, what do you think is fair?" The boy considered seriously. "Maybe she could say sorry and learn to be nicer to dads and moms who work hard." Marcus smiled, the expression carrying both pride in his son and warning for the adults watching. "That's very wise, Tyler. But sometimes sorry isn't enough if you keep hurting people." He turned back to Victoria, whose carefully constructed professional world was crumbling around her. "Captain Ashworth, you have approximately 60 seconds to convince me why you deserve a second chance to learn the difference between professional standards and personal prejudice." The countdown had begun for Victoria's career, and everyone in the room knew it. Victoria Ashworth's 60 seconds felt like 60 hours as the conference room watched her struggle with words that could save or destroy her career. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she faced the reality that the man she'd dismissed as beneath her consideration literally controlled her professional future. "Marcus," she began, her voice cracking slightly, "I understand that my comments were problematic, but my concerns about operational safety remain valid. Single parents face stresses that affect professional performance." Marcus's expression didn't change. Continue. What happened 5 years ago? The crash. 17 people died because a pilot was distracted by family issues. I can't separate professional judgment from that experience. Tyler looked up at his father with confusion. Dad, what's she talking about? Marcus kept his eyes on Victoria as he answered his son. She's talking about being afraid that pilots with families can't do their jobs properly because they worry about their children. That's silly, Tyler said with 9-year-old logic. You worry about me and you're the best pilot ever. The innocent observation hit Victoria like a physical blow. She was being out-reasoned by a child whose father represented everything she feared, yet who clearly felt secure and loved rather than neglected. Sarah Williams's live stream had broken all her personal records, approaching 100,000 simultaneous viewers. Major news networks were now carrying the story live, with aviation experts and civil rights lawyers providing real-time commentary. The story had transcended airline industry drama to become a national conversation about workplace discrimination. Captain Morrison made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding about company culture. We've always supported employee diversity. Have you, Captain Marcus, pulled out his phone and scrolled through messages? Because I'm currently receiving reports from 17 employees about discrimination they've faced based on family status. Would you like me to read some examples? Morrison's face went ashen as he realized the scope of what was being uncovered. Lieutenant Cooper, still reeling from Tyler's earlier wisdom, tried a different approach. Mr. Johnson, I sincerely apologize for my inappropriate comments. I was way out of line. What specifically are you apologizing for? Lieutenant Cooper swallowed hard. For suggesting that single parents can't handle professional responsibilities. For making assumptions based on appearance. For being disrespectful to you and your son. Tyler nodded approvingly. That's better. Mommy taught me that sorry only counts if you know what you did wrong. The mention of Tyler's mother created a moment of profound silence in the room. Everyone suddenly remembered that this was a single father, not by choice but by tragedy. The discrimination he'd faced wasn't just professional. It was personal assault on a man doing his best to honor his wife's memory while raising their son. Marcus's voice carried new emotion when he spoke. My wife Angela died 3 years ago from sudden cardiac complications. Tyler and I have rebuilt our lives around taking care of each other. I work maintenance because it allows me to be present for my son while staying connected to the aviation industry I love. Victoria's designer mask finally cracked completely. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Marcus replied simply. You saw worn clothes and a single father and made assumptions about character competence and commitment. Linda Rodriguez checked her tablet and looked up gravely. Sir, we're receiving calls from the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and 3 different civil rights organizations. This story has reached federal attention. Sarah's viewers were sharing the stream at unprecedented rates. Skyline Justice was trending globally with single parents from around the world sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. The conversation had become about more than one airline. It was about dignity, respect, and the right to work without prejudice. Maria Santos stepped forward with new information. I've been collecting statements from employees. We have documented evidence of discriminatory practices affecting single parents, pregnant women, employees with disabled children, and anyone whose personal circumstances don't fit narrow definitions of professional appearance. Diego Martinez nodded grimly. Maintenance staff have experienced similar bias. Good workers passed over for promotions because they had family obligations or couldn't afford expensive tools. Marcus absorbed each revelation with growing anger, but his voice remained controlled. How many talented people has this company lost because managers valued appearance over ability? Kevin Thompson, still processing the destruction of his own career, pulled out a file folder with shaking hands. Based on exit interview data, approximately 43 employees in the past 18 months cited workplace culture as their reason for leaving. The number hit the room like a bomb. Victoria, who had prided herself on maintaining professional standards, was discovering that her biases had affected the company she thought she was protecting. Tyler, sensing the growing tension, reached up to take his father's hand. "Dad, are you really mad?" Marcus looked down at his son with infinite tenderness. "I'm disappointed, Tyler. When people treat others unfairly, it makes me sad. Can you fix it?" "Yes, son, I can fix it." He turned back to the room, his expression hardening. "Captain Ashworth, your 60 seconds expired several minutes ago. Your explanation focused on defending your prejudices rather than acknowledging their harm." Victoria's perfectly controlled composure finally shattered. "Please, Marcus, I know I was wrong. I can learn, I can change." "Can you? Because based on your response to this conversation, you're still trying to justify discrimination rather than confronting it." Sarah's live-stream chat was exploding with viewers from the aviation industry sharing similar stories. Pilots, mechanics, flight attendants, and ground crew from dozens of airlines were describing workplace cultures that punished parents and rewarded conformity to narrow professional images. Marcus pulled out his phone and placed a call on speaker. "Linda Rodriguez, here," came the crisp professional voice. "Sir, legal department is standing by for immediate personnel actions. Prepare termination paperwork for Captain Victoria Ashworth, Captain James Morrison, and Lieutenant Brad Cooper. Effective immediately." The words hit the room like physical blows. Victoria's face went completely white. Morrison staggered backward, and Cooper made a strangled sound of protest. Furthermore, Marcus continued, "I want a complete audit of all personnel decisions made by these individuals in the past 24 months. Any employee who was discriminated against should be contacted for possible reinstatement or compensation." Tyler looked around at the shocked adult faces with concern. "Dad, why do they look so scared?" Now Marcus knelt beside his son, speaking gently but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sometimes, Tyler, when people make bad choices, there are consequences. These people hurt other families like ours, so now they can't work here anymore. Is that fair? What do you think son Tyler considered seriously, his young mind processing complex questions of justice and mercy? I think if they promised to be really nice to other dads and kids, maybe they could have one more chance." The room held its breath as a 9-year-old's moral wisdom hung in the air. Victoria seized the moment desperately. "Tyler's right," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, I can be better. I can learn. I'll do anything to make this right." Marcus stood slowly looking around the room at the faces watching him. Sarah's live-stream audience was approaching 150,000 viewers, making this one of the most watched workplace discrimination cases in social media history. Tyler Marcus said carefully, "These people didn't just hurt Dad's feelings. They hurt other moms and dads who needed their jobs to take care of their children. What do you think happens to those families?" Tyler's face grew serious as he understood the bigger picture. "That's really bad, Dad. Kids need their parents to have good jobs." Marcus nodded, then addressed the room with final authority. "The decision stands. You're terminated. Security will escort you from the premises immediately." Victoria's career ended not with defiance, but with the sound of a 9-year-old boy's moral clarity cutting through years of justified prejudice. Victoria Ashworth's termination should have been the end, but desperation made her reckless. As security personnel arrived to escort her from the premises, she made one final devastating miscalculation that would ensure her story became a cautionary tale throughout the aviation industry. "You can't do this," Victoria declared, her voice rising to near hysteria as she faced the reality of losing everything. "I have rights. I have contacts in the industry. I'll fight this termination through every legal channel available." Marcus remained calm. Tyler's small hand still clasped in his, watching Victoria's professional mask disintegrate completely. Sarah's live-stream audience had swelled beyond 200,000 viewers, with major news networks now carrying the story as breaking news. Furthermore, Victoria continued her designer composure completely abandoned. "This is all a setup. A maintenance worker doesn't just suddenly become a CEO. These documents are fabricated. This whole thing is some kind of elaborate fraud designed to embarrass me." The accusation hung in the air like toxic smoke. She was now accusing Marcus not just of lying, but of criminal conspiracy. Linda Rodriguez exchanged meaningful glances with Diego Martinez as Victoria dug her professional grave even deeper. Captain Morrison, sensing his own career destruction, decided to join Victoria's desperate gambit. She's right. Something isn't adding up here. Real CEOs don't work maintenance jobs. This is some kind of activist stunt designed to make us look bad. Lieutenant Cooper, despite his earlier apology, nodded agreement. No legitimate business owner would put themselves through this kind of deception. The whole thing smells like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Sarah Williams couldn't believe her luck as a story about workplace discrimination evolved into accusations of fraud and conspiracy. Her viewers were sharing clips faster than social media algorithms could process, making this one of the most viral workplace justice stories in internet history. Tyler looked up at his father with wide eyes. "Dad, they're calling you a liar. Are you going to tell them about the planes?" Marcus smiled down at his son. "What planes, buddy?" "All the planes with our name on them. The ones in the big hangar where you take me on weekends." Victoria seized on Tyler's innocent comment like a drowning person grabbing debris. See, he's coaching his child to support this fraud. Real CEOs don't take their kids to hangars with planes. This is clearly some kind of psychological manipulation. The accusation was so outrageous, so completely divorced from reality, that several people in the room gasped audibly. Victoria had just accused a loving father of using his young son as part of an elaborate conspiracy. Marcus's expression darkened for the first time since the confrontation began. His voice carried dangerous quiet when he spoke. "Captain Ashworth, you've now accused me of fraud, document forgery, and child manipulation. Are you certain you want to continue down this path? I'm certain you're not who you claim to be," Victoria shot back. "And I'm going to expose this whole charade." Diego Martinez had heard enough. "Tyler, remember the surprise your dad has been working on for your birthday." The special room in the building with all the pictures, Tyler's face lit up with innocent excitement. The museum room with pictures of Daddy flying all the different planes, and the big photo where he's getting the award from the president. Victoria's face went completely white as Tyler's words sank in. Captain Morrison started backing toward the door, finally understanding that they'd stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension. Lieutenant Cooper looked physically ill as he realized the magnitude of their mistake. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Security, this is Marcus Johnson. I need a full escort team to Conference Room Alpha. We have individuals making serious accusations that require immediate documentation." Within minutes, the room filled with additional security personnel, each carrying tablets with official documentation. The head of security, a former military officer named James Patterson, approached Marcus with professional deference. "Sir, we have complete documentation packages ready for review. Should we proceed with the full verification protocol?" "Yes," Marcus replied calmly. "Captain Ashworth has accused me of fraud and document forgery. I want every claim thoroughly investigated in front of these witnesses." Patterson nodded and began pulling up documents on a large conference room screen. Federal aviation registration records, corporate tax filings, banking statements, insurance policies, and government contracts appeared in rapid succession, all bearing Marcus Johnson's name and signatures spanning over a decade. Furthermore, Patterson continued, "We have video documentation of Mr. Johnson's presence at industry conferences, federal aviation meetings, and congressional hearings on airline safety. Would you like me to display those as well?" Victoria was now backing toward the wall, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. The evidence was so comprehensive, so obviously authentic, that her fraud accusations were becoming criminal defamation. Sarah's live-stream chat was absolutely exploding with aviation industry professionals recognizing Marcus from various official functions. Pilots, mechanics, and aviation executives were sharing memories of meeting him at conferences, safety summits, and industry awards ceremonies. "I remember him from the 2019 Aviation Safety Summit Type 1 Verified Airline Pilot. He gave the keynote on owner-operator responsibility. Brilliant presentation." Another comment from a verified FAA official, "Marcus Johnson has been a respected industry leader for over a decade. His safety innovations have saved countless lives." Tyler watched the adults with growing confusion, unable to understand why anyone would doubt his father's importance. "Dad, should I get the trophy room key from your office? The one with all your awards?" The innocent offer was the final nail in Victoria's credibility. Marcus actually maintained a private office at the airport, with aviation industry awards, safety certifications, and recognition plaques spanning his entire career. Marcus knelt beside his son with infinite patience. "That's okay, Tyler. I think these people are beginning to understand who Daddy really is." Kevin Thompson, realizing his career was beyond salvation, made one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Sir, I want to state for the record that I never doubted your identity. Any confusion was purely administrative." Kevin Marcus interrupted gently. "We have video of you participating in discussions about my questionable background and possible security risks. Would you like me to have that reviewed as well?" Thompson's face crumpled as he realized that his attempts to ingratiate himself with Victoria's group had been recorded and would be part of any investigation. Victoria, backed against the wall both literally and figuratively, made her final desperate play. Even if you are who you claim to be, that doesn't change the fact that single parents pose operational risks. My professional assessment remains valid regardless of your corporate position. The statement was so tone-deaf, so completely divorced from the reality of her situation, that even her former supporters stared at her in amazement. Marcus stood slowly, his patience finally reaching its limit. "Captain Ashworth, you've now had multiple opportunities to acknowledge your mistakes and show genuine remorse. Instead, you've chosen to double down on discrimination, accuse me of fraud, and suggest I'm manipulating my child." He turned to face the security cameras that had been recording everything. "For the record, and for the 250,000 people watching this live stream, I want to be absolutely clear: Skyline. Regional airlines will never again tolerate discrimination based on family status, financial appearance, or personal circumstances." Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, does this mean the mean people can't hurt other families anymore?" Marcus picked up his son, holding him close while addressing the room one final time. "Yes, Tyler. This means no family will ever be treated the way we were treated today." Victoria Ashworth's career didn't just end in that conference room. It became a case study in how prejudice, when combined with professional arrogance and social media exposure, could destroy not just individual careers, but entire worldviews about who deserves respect in America. The conference room had become a stage for one of the most dramatic workplace confrontations in social media history. Sarah Williams' live stream was approaching 300,000 concurrent viewers, with major news networks broadcasting the story internationally. Skyline justice had become more than a trending topic. It was a cultural moment. Marcus Johnson stood at the head of the conference table, his 9-year-old son beside him, facing the wreckage of careers built on prejudice and assumption. Victoria Ashworth. Captain Morrison and Lieutenant Cooper sat in stunned silence as security personnel prepared final documentation for their termination. But Marcus wasn't finished. The man who had spent 3 years working in anonymity was about to reveal the full scope of what Victoria and her supporters had attempted to destroy. Tyler Marcus said gently, "Remember how we talked about showing people who Daddy really is?" Tyler nodded solemnly. "You said, when people are really mean to families, sometimes you have to show them the big picture." "That's right. Are you ready to help Daddy show everyone the big picture?" Tyler's face lit up with excited anticipation. "Can we show them the airplane museum?" Victoria's face went completely pale. Morrison and Cooper exchanged terrified glances as they began to grasp that whatever was coming next would dwarf everything they'd already witnessed. Marcus pulled out his phone and placed a call on speaker. "Patricia, this is Marcus. Are you ready for the facility tour?" A crisp, professional voice responded immediately. "Yes, sir. Full documentation is prepared and the facility is ready for viewing. Should I activate the live stream integration, please do. I want complete transparency for our viewers." Sarah's camera captured every moment as Marcus explained to his audience. Ladies and gentlemen, for those just joining us, we're about to take an unprecedented look behind the scenes of one of the most successful regional airlines in North America. He turned to Victoria with deadly calm. Captain Ashworth, you've spent considerable time today explaining what qualifies someone for aviation leadership. You've questioned my experience, my judgment, and my commitment to safety. Would you like to see exactly what you've been dismissing? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. What do you mean, Tyler? Tell everyone what Daddy does on weekends. Tyler's innocent excitement filled the room. We go to the big building where all the planes live. Daddy checks every single one to make sure they're safe for people to fly in. And he shows me the room with all the pictures of him flying with important people. Marcus nodded to security, who began wheeling in large monitors connected to live video feeds. The screens flickered to life, showing aerial views of the largest private aircraft hangar complex in the Pacific Northwest. This is Skyline Regional's primary maintenance and operations facility, Marcus explained as the cameras panned across dozens of aircraft in various stages of service and maintenance. 47 aircraft currently in active service with a perfect safety record spanning over 3 years. Victoria stared at the screens in growing horror as she recognized the scope of the operation she'd been dismissing. These weren't small regional aircraft. They were multi-million-dollar commercial planes serving major routes throughout the western United States. Furthermore, Marcus continued as the cameras moved inside the facility, this complex employs over 400 people in maintenance operations, customer service, and administrative roles. Many of them are single parents, immigrants, military veterans, and others who faced workplace discrimination elsewhere. Captain Morrison's hands were shaking as he watched the professional operation unfolding on screen. This can't be. Can't be what Captain can't be owned by someone who gets his hands dirty. Can't be successful under the leadership of a single father. Can't exist without conforming to your narrow definitions of professional appearance. Lieutenant Cooper made a strangled sound as cameras showed the employee break room where dozens of workers were gathered around televisions, watching the live stream and cheering for their boss. Tyler pointed excitedly at the screen. There's Miss Rodriguez and Mr. Martinez. And all my friends from the daycare. The mention of on-site daycare hit Victoria like a physical blow. Not only did Marcus own a successful airline, but he'd created an employee-friendly environment that actively supported working parents. Sarah's viewers were going absolutely wild as the scope of the story became clear. Comments flooded in from aviation industry professionals who were recognizing the facility, the aircraft, and Marcus himself from various industry functions and safety conferences. Patricia Marcus called to his off-site coordinator, "Please show our viewers the awards and recognition wall." The cameras moved to an impressive display of Industry Honors Aviation Safety Awards, Business Excellence Recognition Community Impact Honors, and a Presidential Certificate for Outstanding Contribution to Transportation Safety. Tyler bounced excitedly. "Show them the picture of you and the President, Daddy." A large photograph appeared on screen, showing Marcus in a formal business suit shaking hands with the President of the United States during a White House ceremony honoring transportation industry leaders. Victoria's world was collapsing in real time as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. She hadn't just insulted a maintenance worker, she'd publicly humiliated one of the most respected leaders in American aviation. But Marcus wasn't finished. "Patricia, please access the corporate financial records that are matters of public record." New screens displayed Federal Aviation Administration filings, Department of Transportation reports, and Securities and Exchange Commission documents showing Skyline Regional Airlines' remarkable growth, profitability, and safety record under Marcus Johnson's leadership. Annual revenue $847 million. Perfect safety record, 0 incidents in over 1.2 million flight hours. Employee satisfaction rating 94.3%, highest in the regional aviation industry. Captain Morrison had gone completely white. "Sir, I had no idea. None of us knew." "Knew what, Captain?" "That success comes in different packages than you expected. That leadership doesn't require designer suits and corporate posturing." Diego Martinez appeared on one of the screens, speaking directly to the live stream audience. Marcus Johnson built this company from nothing by treating people with respect and recognizing talent regardless of background. He's the best boss any of us have ever had. Maria Santos joined Diego on screen. He created policies to support single-parents, immigrants, and anyone who's faced workplace discrimination. Our employee retention rate is the highest in the industry because people feel valued here. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. Daddy, why are the mean people crying? Victoria was indeed crying, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks as she faced the complete destruction of everything she'd believed about professional success and personal worth. Marcus knelt beside his son, speaking gently while maintaining eye contact with Victoria. Sometimes, Tyler, when people realize they've been very wrong about something important, it makes them sad. Should we forgive them? Marcus stood slowly, his expression thoughtful. That depends, son. Are they sorry because they got caught being mean or because they understand that being mean was wrong? The question hung in the air as 300,000 viewers waited for Victoria's response. Her career was over, her reputation destroyed, her worldview shattered. But she still had one chance to demonstrate whether she'd learned anything from this experience. Victoria's answer would determine not just her immediate future, but her legacy in an industry that was watching her every word. Victoria Ashworth's tears fell onto the mahogany conference table as she faced the complete annihilation of her understanding of power, success, and professional worth. The screens around her displayed an aviation empire built by the man she dismissed as beneath her consideration, while 300,000 people watched her grapple with the magnitude of her mistake. Marcus Johnson stood quietly, Tyler's small hand in his, waiting for her response to his son's question about forgiveness. The moment stretched like a held breath, carrying the weight of careers, reputations, and fundamental questions about human dignity. Victoria's voice broke completely. I don't know how to be sorry enough for this. Sarah Williams's livestream audience erupted as Victoria's admission echoed around the world. Comments flooded in from aviation professionals, civil rights advocates, and working parents who saw their own struggles reflected in Marcus's story. Tyler looked up at his father with concern. Dad, she sounds really sad. Marcus knelt beside his son, speaking gently while the cameras captured every word. Yes, Tyler. Sometimes when people realize they've hurt others, it makes them very sad. Is that good sad or bad sad? What do you think Buddy Tyler studied Victoria's tear-stained face with the uncomplicated moral clarity that only children possess? I think maybe it's good sad, because if she's really sorry, she might not be mean to other kids' daddies. Marcus stood, his expression thoughtful as he addressed the room and the massive online audience. 3 years ago, I made a choice to step away from corporate visibility to focus on being present for my son. Today, I'm making another choice, to step back into that visibility to protect other families from the kind of discrimination we experienced. He turned to face Victoria directly. Captain Ashworth, you asked whether you could learn to be better. My son believes in second chances for people who are genuinely sorry. But this isn't just about you anymore. Linda Rodriguez appeared on the main screen from the corporate offices. Sir, we've received over 400 calls in the past hour from employees, customers, and industry professionals sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. This has become much larger than a personnel issue. Marcus nodded gravely. Patricia, please display the employee testimonial compilation. New screens lit up showing dozens of Skyline regional employees sharing their experiences. Single mothers describing how the company's family-friendly policies had saved their careers. Military veterans explaining how Marcus's leadership had given them purpose after service. Immigrants expressing gratitude for opportunities regardless of accent or background. Tyler watched the testimonials with growing understanding. Dad, all these people love working for you because you're nice to families. That's right, son. When we take care of each other, everyone does better work. Victoria's voice was barely audible when she spoke. I've destroyed everything I worked for, haven't I? Marcus studied her tear-stained face with the same analytical precision he once applied to aircraft maintenance. Victoria, your career as a pilot is over. But your understanding of what that career was supposed to represent, that's something you can still choose to rebuild. Captain Morrison cleared his throat nervously. Sir, what happens to us now? That depends, Marcus replied. Are you asking as someone who's genuinely learned something today, or someone who's hoping to minimize consequences? Morrison's silence was answer enough. Lieutenant Cooper had gone completely white, finally understanding that his casual cruelty had destroyed not just his own future, but any chance of redemption through association. But Victoria surprised everyone by standing slowly removing her captain's wings with trembling hands. Marcus, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to ask for something else. The room fell silent as she placed her wings on the conference table. Let me be a cautionary tale. Use my story to teach others what prejudice costs, not just for the people who experience it, but for the people who practice it. Tyler looked at the shiny wings on the table with curiosity. Dad, why did she take off her airplane pins? Marcus picked up the captain's wings, studying them with respect for what they represented, even as he acknowledged what they'd enabled. These pins mean someone worked very hard to learn how to fly, Tyler. But flying isn't just about moving planes through the sky. It's about taking care of the people who trust you with their lives. He held the wings out to Victoria. Keep these, not as a captain, but as a reminder that real professional standards are about character, not appearance. About competence, not comfort. About serving others, not serving yourself. Victoria's hands shook as she accepted the wings back. What does that mean for my future? It means you're terminated from Skyline Regional effective immediately. Your actions today violated every principle this company was founded on. But it also means you have a choice about what comes next. Sarah's audience watched with rapt attention as Marcus outlined the consequences with the measured precision of someone who understood both justice and mercy. Captain Morris and Lieutenant Cooper, your termination stand. Your patterns of discrimination were not isolated incidents, but part of a culture that ends today. Both men nodded numbly, finally understanding that their careers had ended not in a moment of poor judgment, but in a revelation of character that had been building for years. Marcus turned back to Victoria with final authority. You asked to be a cautionary tale. I'll give you that opportunity. Skyline Regional will establish the Victoria Ashworth Bias Awareness Program, using your story to train aviation professionals about the costs of discrimination. The offer was both generous and devastating. Redemption through public humiliation, education through personal destruction. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, will the program help other kids' parents not get treated mean? Marcus smiled down at his son with infinite pride. Yes, Tyler. It will help make sure other families are treated with respect. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. I don't deserve this chance, but I'll take it. The cameras captured her final exit from the conference room, no longer the confident pilot who had dismissed Marcus hours earlier, but a broken woman carrying the weight of her prejudices and the possibility of redemption. As the door closed behind the terminated employees, Marcus stood alone with Tyler in a room full of camera security personnel and the watching eyes of hundreds of thousands of viewers who had witnessed one of the most complete reversals of power in workplace history. Tyler Marcus said quietly, "What did you learn today?" The boy considered seriously. I learned that being the boss isn't about being mean to people. It's about taking care of people. Marcus picked up his son, holding him close while addressing their massive audience one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what real professional standards look like. Not the clothes you wear or the money you have, but the respect you show and the care you take with other people's dignity. The revelation was complete, but the transformation was just beginning. The immediate aftermath of Victoria's termination felt like the calm after a hurricane. Marcus Johnson stood in the conference room with Tyler, surrounded by security personnel and cameras, as the full scope of necessary changes began to crystallize. Sarah Williams's live stream had become appointment viewing, with over 400,000 people witnessing what many commentators were calling a watershed moment for workplace justice. Linda Marcus said into his phone, "Initiate Protocol 7 immediately." I want complete personnel audits, policy reviews, and victim outreach programs operational within 72 hours. Tyler looked up at his father with curiosity. Dad, what's Protocol 7? Marcus knelt beside his son, explaining patiently while his words carried to the global audience. It's a plan we made to help fix problems when people get treated unfairly at work, buddy, like a big cleanup for hurt feelings and broken trust. Linda Rodriguez appeared on the main screen from corporate headquarters, surrounded by legal team members and human resources specialists. Sir, we've already identified 47 employees who may have experienced discrimination under the terminated managers. Our legal department is preparing outreach immediately. Good. What about current operations? Diego Martinez stepped forward, his maintenance uniform, a stark contrast to the corporate environment, but his authority absolute. All aircraft inspections, current all maintenance schedules on track. The team is actually more motivated than I've seen them in years. They're proud of what happened today. Sarah's live stream comments were exploding, with aviation industry professionals sharing their own stories of workplace bias. Skyline transformation was trending globally, with pilots, mechanics, flight attendants, and ground crew from dozens of airlines describing similar experiences and hoping for similar changes. Marcus turned to address the cameras directly. To the hundreds of thousands of people watching, and to the aviation industry as a whole, what happened here today wasn't about one airline or one incident. This was about a pattern of discrimination that affects working parents, minorities, immigrants, and anyone who doesn't fit narrow definitions of professional appearance. He gestured to Tyler, who waved at the cameras with innocent enthusiasm. My son deserves to grow up in a world where his worth isn't determined by his family's financial status or his parents' job title. Every child deserves that. Kevin Thompson, still processing his own termination, stood near the doorway with obvious shame. Sir, before security escorts me out, I need to say something. Marcus nodded permission, and Thompson stepped forward to face the cameras. I participated in a culture that valued appearance over ability, comfort over character. I watched good people get dismissed because they didn't fit an image, and I said nothing. That makes me complicit in every bit of pain those families experienced. Tyler looked at the man with surprising compassion. Are you sorry for hurting people's feelings? Thompson's voice cracked. Yes, son. I'm very sorry. Then maybe you can learn to be nicer like the mean lady. The simple exchange, witnessed by hundreds of thousands, became an instant symbol of how children's moral clarity could shame adults into better behavior. Marcus's phone buzzed with an urgent call. Sir, this is Patricia from Operations. We're receiving calls from major news networks, the Department of Transportation, and 3 different civil rights organizations requesting interviews and information. Schedule them all, Marcus replied. Full transparency, complete cooperation. The aviation industry needs to have this conversation openly. Maria Santos appeared on screen with breaking news. Sir, employees at 17 other airlines have contacted us about starting similar discrimination reviews at their companies. This is spreading throughout the industry. Tyler bounced excitedly. Dad, does that mean lots of families will be safer at work? Marcus smiled, his expression carrying both satisfaction and determination. That's exactly what it means, Tyler. Sarah Williams, still live streaming, received notification that her stream had broken platform records. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now approaching 500,000 simultaneous viewers, and this story is being covered by every major news network. This is no longer just about one airline. It's become a national conversation about workplace dignity. Linda Rodriguez returned to the screen with updates. Sir, our legal review has uncovered documentation of deliberate discrimination patterns. Captain Ashworth, Captain Morrison, and Lieutenant Cooper maintained informal blacklists of employees they considered unprofessional based purely on family status and economic background. The revelation sent shockwaves through the livestream audience. Comments poured in from aviation professionals recognizing similar patterns at their own companies, creating real-time documentation of industry-wide discrimination. Marcus's expression hardened. How many careers were damaged by these blacklists? Preliminary count shows 63 employees either denied promotions, passed over for opportunities, or pressured to leave the company. We're contacting every individual for possible compensation and reinstatement. Diego Martinez shook his head in disgust. Some of our best people left because they couldn't advance. We lost talent because of prejudice. Tyler tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, can you give those people their jobs back? We're going to try, son. Sometimes fixing mistakes takes time, but we'll do everything we can. Marcus turned back to the cameras with renewed purpose. Effective immediately, Skyline Regional Airlines is implementing the most comprehensive anti-discrimination policies in the aviation industry. Zero tolerance for bias based on family status, economic background, appearance, or personal circumstances. He pulled out a prepared statement, his voice carrying the authority of both corporate leadership and personal conviction. Furthermore, we're establishing a $50 million fund for industry-wide discrimination prevention training, victim compensation, and support for working families in aviation. The number was staggering, representing more than just corporate responsibility. It was a declaration that discrimination had real costs that would be paid by those who practiced it. Sarah's audience was going absolutely wild as the scope of the commitment became clear. Aviation industry professionals were sharing the announcement across social media faster than platforms could track engagement. Tyler looked up at his father with awe. $50 million. That's a lot of money. It's worth it if it means other kids never have to watch their parents get treated the way we were treated today. Linda Rodriguez provided final updates from corporate headquarters. Sir, the board of directors has unanimously approved all proposed policy changes. Legal has cleared the victim compensation program. HR is preparing implementation immediately. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. Diego, you're promoted to Chief Operations Officer effective immediately. Maria Santos, you're our new Director of Employee Relations. I want people in charge who understand the value of treating everyone with respect. Both promotions were met with applause from the security team and cheers from employees watching on screen. As the formal business concluded, Marcus lifted Tyler into his arms, addressing their global audience one final time. Today started with discrimination and ended with transformation. Not just at one company, but hopefully throughout an entire industry. Thank you for witnessing this, for sharing these stories, and for believing that every person deserves dignity at work. Tyler waved at the cameras with unbridled joy. Bye, everyone. Remember to be nice to all the daddies and mommies who work hard. The live stream ended with the image of a father and son who had transformed personal pain into industry-wide change, proving that sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who've been told they don't belong there. 6 months after the confrontation that changed everything, Marcus Johnson stood in the same conference room where his identity had been revealed to the world. But today felt different. Sunlight streamed through windows that had once framed discrimination and now illuminated transformation. Tyler sat beside him, no longer a 9-year-old confused by adult cruelty, but a 10-year-old who understood that his father had helped change the world. Dad Tyler said, looking around the room with bright eyes, "Remember when the mean lady said you couldn't be a pilot?" Marcus smiled, his heart full, as he watched his son process their journey. "I remember, buddy. What do you think about that now?" "I think she was silly. You're not just a pilot. You're the pilot who makes sure all the other pilots are nice to families." The simple observation carried profound truth. Marcus had become more than an airline owner. He'd become a symbol of workplace justice that resonated far beyond aviation. The Skyline transformation movement had inspired federal legislation protecting workers from family status discrimination, and his story was taught in business schools as a case study in authentic leadership. Sarah Williams entered the room, no longer carrying live stream equipment, but wearing press credentials from a major network where she'd launched a documentary series about workplace discrimination. The story that had made her career continued to ripple through industries across America. Marcus Sarah said warmly, "Are you ready for the 6-month follow-up interview? We're ready." Marcus replied, Tyler nodding eagerly beside him. The cameras rolled as Sarah began. 6 months ago, this room witnessed one of the most dramatic workplace justice moments in modern history. Marcus Johnson. How has life changed for you? And Tyler Marcus considered the question thoughtfully. The biggest change isn't in our circumstances. It's in Tyler's understanding of fairness. He's learned that standing up for others isn't just the right thing to do, it's the only thing to do. Tyler leaned into the microphone with characteristic enthusiasm. And now, I get to visit all the airports where Daddy's helping other families. We went to 12 different places and everywhere has pictures of our story to remind people to be nice. Sarah smiled at Tyler's excitement. What about the people who were mean to you? Do you ever think about them? Tyler's expression grew serious. Victoria sends me cards sometimes. She says she's learning to be better to people. I hope she really means it. Marcus's eyes softened. Victoria Ashworth has become one of the most effective advocates for anti-discrimination training in the industry. Her willingness to use her story as education has probably prevented thousands of families from experiencing what we experienced. The redemption arc had been genuine and difficult. Victoria had testified before Congress about unconscious bias in aviation, spoken at diversity conferences across the country, and worked unpaid for civil rights organizations. Her fall from grace had become a genuine commitment to justice. And what about Skyline Regional, Sarah asked. We're the most requested airline in North America for families, Marcus replied with quiet pride. Our employee retention rate is 97% highest in the industry, but more importantly, 17 other airlines have adopted our family protection policies. Tyler bounced in his chair with excitement. And we have the biggest daycare in the whole airport. Kids can watch their moms and dads work on the planes. The on-site daycare had become Marcus's signature innovation, proving that supporting working families actually improved productivity and safety. Other companies across industries were copying the model. Sarah turned to more personal questions. Tyler, do you understand now why your dad worked as a maintenance technician instead of just being the boss? Tyler nodded seriously. He wanted to make sure he knew how to take care of the planes and take care of me. Good bosses need to understand everybody's jobs, not just sit in fancy offices. Marcus felt his chest tighten with pride. His son had learned the most important lesson about leadership. That authority comes from service, not position. One final question, Sarah said. What message do you have for working parents who face discrimination? Marcus lifted Tyler onto his lap, both of them facing the camera, with confidence born from surviving injustice and creating change. Your worth isn't determined by other people's prejudices, Marcus said firmly. Your children are watching how you handle unfairness, and they need to see you stand up for dignity, yours and others. Tyler added his own wisdom. And if grown-ups are being mean about your family, maybe they forgot that families are the best part of everything. You can remind them by being really, really good at your job. As the interview concluded, Marcus reflected on the journey from humiliation to transformation. The conference room where he'd once absorbed insults now hosted diversity training sessions. The airline where he'd hidden his identity now celebrated authentic leadership. The industry that had once punished single parents now protected them with federal legislation. But the most important change was in Tyler, who'd learned that justice requires courage. Forgiveness requires strength, and love requires action. Walking hand in hand through the terminal after the interview, father and son passed the memorial wall dedicated to workplace dignity. Photos of employees who'd faced discrimination but found justice lined the corridor, their stories preserved as inspiration for future generations. Tyler stopped in front of their own photo, taken on the day of the confrontation, showing Marcus in his maintenance coveralls and Tyler with his world's best pilot drawing. The caption read, "True professional standards are measured by character, not appearance. By service, not status. By the respect we show others, not the power we hold over them." Dad Tyler said quietly, "I'm proud that we helped make work better for other families." Marcus knelt beside his son in the bustling terminal, surrounded by travelers who might never know that their safety and dignity were protected, by a maintenance worker who'd refused to be silenced, and a little boy who'd believed in justice. "Tyler, you taught me the most important thing about being a leader." "What's that?" "That the best way to measure success isn't by how high you climb, but by how many people you lift up with you." Together, they walked toward the hangar where Marcus still worked on aircraft every weekend. Not because he had to, but because he loved the work and wanted Tyler to understand that all honest labor deserves respect. Their story had ended where it began, with a father and son building something beautiful together, one relationship at a time. 6 months later, Skyline Regional became the most respected airline for employee relations in North America. Marcus's story, viewed over 50 million times across platforms, sparked industry-wide reforms and inspired federal legislation protecting workers from family status discrimination. Victoria Ashworth was never hired by another major airline, but found meaningful work with a nonprofit organization dedicated to bias prevention training, where her story of fall and redemption became a powerful tool for education. Tyler Johnson thrived in his new role as his father's proudest supporter and the unofficial ambassador for workplace dignity. The boy's innocent wisdom during the confrontation had been quoted in congressional hearings, business school curricula, and diversity training programs across multiple industries. His world's best pilot drawing became a symbol of how children's love can inspire adults to be better than their prejudices. The Skyline transformation movement grew into a global campaign for workplace dignity, proving that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who chooses to stay quiet until speaking up can create real change. Marcus Johnson didn't just reclaim his respect, he rebuilt an entire industry's understanding of what true professionalism looks like, one family at a time. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of justice and transformation. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that standing up for dignity makes a difference. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter and showing that one person's courage can change an entire industry. Together, we can build workplaces where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of their circumstances. Thank you for watching, and remember, true strength isn't about putting others down, it's about lifting them up.